Today I'm reacting to your wrestling hot takes. I do these videos once a week, but we're doing it a little bit different this week because the hot takes are not from X, they're actually from you guys here on YouTube. I made a community post asking for your wrestling hot takes and over 1,000 of you commented on it. So maybe I'll swap it around. Maybe one week I'll do hot takes from Twitter and the next week I'll do hot takes from a community post on YouTube. So that being said, if you want to be part of next week's hot takes video, make sure that you're following me on X. The link is down in the description below. I ask for your hot takes there every Thursday. And hey, as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know you're gonna fall in love with this channel. Why? Here's why, because we upload daily wrestling content. All right, let's read some stupid shit. It's a crime that we don't really appreciate how much Randy Orton cemented his legacy parallel to the GOATs of WWE. While some of them have retired and others are on the cusp of retirement, Randy's longevity is almost unmatchable. Look, you're absolutely right here. I do think that it's a travesty, or like you said, a crime, that Randy Orton isn't often invited to the table when we're talking about the greatest of all time in the world of professional wrestling. He absolutely deserves to be in the conversation. The reason he's not most of the time is because he was never the guy in his generation. That guy was John Cena. And when we think of the GOATs, when we think of the Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling, we always talk about those guys. But guys like Triple H, guys like Randy Orton absolutely need to be part of the discussion when we're talking about the greatest of all time. What I fear is that we're not going to truly recognize how good we have it with Randy Orton until he retires. Look, this injury, this 1 year that he's been gone, I think has helped people realize how awesome Randy Orton is and how much we're going to miss him when he properly retires. Seth's title reign has been great. I get when it's said that his opponents are really good and have reasons to win, but I see it as a Batman versus his villains. When the villain has a motivation you can agree with, it makes the story a lot more intriguing, which to me is why every feud Seth has had with the belt has been fantastic. Look, I think ultimately we kind of agree because I do like the feuds that he's had. I do like the quote villains that have gone after the belt because, as you said, they have a proper motivation and a reason to go after this championship, which is why it's so easy to get behind them. The problem is the Batman in this situation, Seth Rollins. He doesn't have a story. He doesn't have a reason why he should be fighting so hard to hold on to this championship. I'm sure he does. It's just not as good as the story being told for the villains, which makes it the reason why a lot of people are wanting Seth Rollins to lose this championship, including myself. Bayley deserves so much more. She was one of the MVPs of the pandemic era and carried the women's division in a time when for someone watching wrestling meant peace. I would love to see her winning the Rumble and going against Io at WrestleMania. Bayley truly is the unsung hero of the four horsewomen of the WWE. Even though she's no longer in the WWE, it seems like Sasha Banks gets more love than Bayley as being part of four horsewomen of the WWE, which is an absolute shame. You're right, she was one of the MVPs of the pandemic era and she deserves her roses. And I do think that they are leading to a storyline where we're gonna eventually get Io Sky versus Bayley. I don't know if it's gonna be at WrestleMania, but I also would like to see her win the Rumble. Again, she is one of the few major names that hasn't won that Rumble. So I'd love to see her do it. I'd love to see her go up against Io. I don't know that it necessarily has to be a WrestleMania title match, but I do think that this is where they're going anyway. The Rey Mysterio and Monday Night Messiah feud was one of the best storylines in WWE. It even led up to a very unique match type that really shined on the show, at least a top 3 feud in recent memory. This is not a top 3 feud in recent memory. Hey, if you like it, you like it, but an eye for an eye? Like, come on, are we really reminiscing on the whole Rey Mysterio lost an eye gimmick thing? No. WWE should bring back Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT for Survivor Series. It was a really neat concept and I loved it, and with how different the rosters are from 4 years ago, we could get some really interesting teams. Also, that men's elimination match is one of my favorite matches. Dude, I'd love for this to happen again. That is my favorite Survivor Series of the past 10 years. That NXT versus SmackDown versus Raw was so good, and like you said, that men's elimination match was absolutely fantastic. I would love to see this again. I think the NXT roster is getting to that point where it is good enough where they could put together a good women's team and a good men's team to realistically go up against the main roster. So yeah, sure, why not? I'm with you here. Alexa Bliss doesn't get enough credit. Her run as the goddess was awesome. She is basically the fifth horsewoman. You know, I really didn't think of her as one of the horsewomen, but you're kind of right. Like when they all got called up, Alexa Bliss at that very same time carved out a very great career for herself. And I do think that that goes by the wayside and we should celebrate that more. I think we as fans take for granted the accessibility of wrestling nowadays. The fact that I can watch WWE, AEW, New Japan, and everything else with the click of a button or a subscription to a streaming service is phenomenal. I would have never heard names like Will Ospreay if it wasn't for wrestling accessibility. You're 1000% right. And I didn't pick this because it's a hot take, because it's just fundamentally true. I do think that people do take it for granted, but it's a fact that it's amazing that we have such great accessibility to professional wrestling. I picked this to point out how dumb it is for fans to care about TV ratings, because there are so many different ways to watch professional wrestling. My TikToks alone, people watch that hundreds of thousands of times to keep up with wrestling. There's so many different ways to watch wrestling that just expecting people to sit in front of a cable box and count them as a rating is such an archaic way to determine whether or not a wrestling product has actually had eyeballs on it. I think it's so dumb, but hey, whatever. That's the era of advertising that we're still in. When the Bloodline inevitably gets inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, Sammy deserves to be inducted with them. Shit, yeah, dude. I didn't even think of that. Absolutely. I would love for Sammy Uso to be inducted in there as, at the very least, as an honorary Hall of Fame Us, you know? Look, I say this because that era of the Bloodline, that like 8-month stretch with Sami Zayn in it, is the best era of the Bloodline. You have to have him in there. I didn't even think of this. This is brilliant. I would love to have him be part of the Bloodline if they do get inducted into the Hall of Fame. The editor isn't that bad and should be released for a Christmas break. Now, looking back in retrospect, I feel that the Cruiserweight division / or the Cruiserweight Classic should return. It was truly something special that was wasted, but I feel that if done right, it could be one of the best moves for the WWE, and it also allows for Cruiserweight stars like Tozawa to shine. The Cruiserweight Classic and 205 Live was a brilliant idea, just executed at the wrong time. If they were to do the Cruiserweight Classic, well, actually the Cruiserweight Classic in that time ended up being a success. I guess I should really say 205 Live and the Cruiserweight division and the Cruiserweight title. If it were to be done today, it would be so much better, because we're under the reign and tutelage of Triple H, who would actually give it a chance, unlike Vince McMahon, who just saw everybody there as just a vanilla midget and just saw them all as C-tier acts. I think we could dip our toes into this and just have another Cruiserweight Classic and see what kind of reaction we get. I do feel like the reaction would be universally very positive for something like this, though. Bray Wyatt's death was a tragedy and a huge loss to the wrestling industry, but the reaction to his death has only been so intense because of how much shit people constantly talked about him from the moment he went on sick leave. They feel collectively guilty. All right, so I picked this one to address a couple of things. The first one that I want to address is you saying that the death only really felt intense to the wrestling community because people kind of felt collectively guilty over the negative criticism that they were giving Bray Wyatt. And I think that's very pessimistic to think that people can only feel bad and mourn somebody just because they feel guilty. I think that's just inherently untrue. I think that you can be critical of somebody's work, and then the second that they die, you can put that aside and absolutely grieve for the loss that we had to the wrestling community. I don't think that it has to do anything with collective guilt over the criticism that people such as myself laid on Bray Wyatt. Like, that is a man of the industry, somebody that does something that we love that has passed away. You can feel awful and mourn that and have it feel really intense without it being just a case of guilt. Like, when I look at myself, I was super critical of Bray Wyatt, and that death still absolutely devastated me. It was awful. It was one of the worst days as a wrestling fan that we've all collectively felt. But I don't feel any guilt over the negative things that I said about him, because all of the things that I said about him were all related to the character work that I wasn't enjoying. It was all related to the in-ring work that I wasn't enjoying. It was all fair criticism, and I still stand by all of that criticism that I laid on Bray Wyatt. But I can absolutely feel horrible for his death. I can absolutely mourn. I can absolutely feel devastated for the family without feeling guilty over the things that I said, because I stand by the criticism that I laid on Bray Wyatt. Despite what Nia Jax did in her previous run that made everyone dislike her, her return has been great for the Raw's women division so far. Dude, I gotta eat my words because you're absolutely right. I said that this is the dumbest thing that the WWE has done in a long time. I can't believe that they brought her back. She's just gonna injure everybody. But I've actually really been enjoying Nia Jax. She has gotten significantly better. So yeah, I agree with you. If CM Punk comes back, he shouldn't go for the undisputed title like everyone wants him to, but instead go for the World Heavyweight title. This will really help take the quote secondary title tag off of the World Heavyweight Championship. I actually want him to go for the World Heavyweight Championship, but not because of the whole concept of it being a secondary title or a participation ribbon. I just think that the better feuds for CM Punk lay over on Monday Night Raw and in the people that are in the hunt for the World Heavyweight Championship. I look at the likes of Nakamura, Drew McIntyre, of course, Seth Rollins. That's where I want to see CM Punk. I think that there's just more interesting feuds than just seeing him go up against the Bloodline where he's just gonna inevitably lose to them. The less I read comment threads and Reddit posts, the more I enjoy wrestling as a whole. I don't know if that's a reflection of myself or the IWC, but I stopped a few months ago and I'm having the best time. And dude, you should keep doing that because the majority of posts on Twitter, the majority of posts on Reddit are from super fans that really only want to talk about their grievances with the product. So it makes it seem like they hate it, and it makes it seem like the problems in wrestling are much bigger than they actually are when they're really not. Because the people in the IWC, we're just a vocal minority. We're very, very loud, but our opinion ultimately doesn't matter. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to tune out posts on Reddit, Twitter, and maybe like negative YouTube channels because you will enjoy wrestling more. If MJF signs with the WWE, it would be one of the biggest acquisitions in company history. I don't know how that's a hot take. That's just kind of obvious. Damage Control need to win War Games. It's been over a year since their debut, and the WWE has done next to nothing to show their dominance as a faction. The fact that they're where they are now after Bianca almost completely buried the entire faction on her own last year is a miracle. A win in a War Games over the names on the Babyface team would hopefully finally elevate them to the top stars that they should have already been. I'm with you here. I think that this is make or break for Damage Control. They absolutely 100% need to win this because consistently they have taken L after L after L after L. They have been used to feed the likes of Bianca, to feed the likes of Charlotte Flair, and it's about time that they feed Damage Control because we need a strong, dominant heel presence on SmackDown. And individually, the women of Damage Control against Bianca Belair and against Charlotte Flair just aren't it. But if you put them together, absolutely they can be that heel presence that dominates the top of the SmackDown women's roster. They lost last year as War Games. They lost every feud after that. Like you said, Bianca absolutely clowned on them. If we want to take this faction seriously, they need to win this. I think that Johnny Gargano has the potential to be the next Daniel Bryan. First, he needs his old iconic theme back, and next, the fans should bring those smiling posters to showcase how over he could be. So basically, rewind the clock about 4 years to NXT Black and Gold when he had all of these things. It's just not going to happen anymore. I think that Triple H has tried, not very well with Johnny Gargano, but the magic has not been able to be rekindled with the main roster. I don't think that this is going to happen anytime soon. The editor really needs human rights. Well, that's assuming that my editor is a human, but truly he's a dirty, disgusting ghoul, so he doesn't deserve any rights. If Cody wasn't around, I think that there is a much better story to be told if a Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns match happened in the main event of WrestleMania, and Rollins would be the one to dethrone Reigns. They really never went back to this. They never really re-tapped on the Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins feud, and I don't understand why. It was kind of left in a cliffhanger anyway during that Royal Rumble match a couple of years ago with Seth Rollins actually winning the match via disqualification, and they just chose to never revisit the darn thing, which is upsetting. I do think that there is still a lot of untapped potential for Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins. Maybe they're saving it for something down the line, but I'd like to see it again. The fans' unreasonable expectation for a wrestler's return ruins SummerSlam, and it could potentially ruin Survivor Series if the same thing happens again. People expected Randy or The Rock to show up at SummerSlam and were pissed off when they didn't. And now we're seeing more anticipation for Randy WWE's return for Survivor Series, and for some reason, the rehire of CM Punk. I get it completely. We all want to see our old favorites come back in glorious fashion, but we spend so much time theorizing and predicting that we lose focus of the actual match card we already have. So I think this is an excellent point, and I think this is the reason why I don't want there to be a mystery fifth person for the men's Survivor Series team for the babyfaces. I just want them to be announced ahead of time. Why? Because if it ends up being a surprise, and if it's in Chicago and that surprise isn't CM Punk, whoever comes out is going to get booed like Rey Mysterio did all those years ago when he came out 30th instead of Daniel Bryan at the Royal Rumble. I really think that they should announce it beforehand so that there aren't any missed expectations like you're setting up here, because you are absolutely right. I ruined SummerSlam for myself because of my crazy expectations, and I think a lot of fans did the same thing. So I've learned from my mistakes to not have these crazy expectations going into these major premium live events for crazy returns. So I'm like, in my mind, I'm checked. I'm okay. Whatever happens, happens. But you're right. There's a huge subset of fans that will absolutely be disappointed if we don't get major returns. So they should just they should just prevent there from being any sort of backlash by just announcing who the damn person is before the match. Baron Corbin deserves to main event WrestleMania. In fact, he's earned it. Okay, like he's earned an NXT title shot. Relax with the main eventing WrestleMania. Like we're not there yet. WWE should bring back a Cyber Sunday pay-per-view type event. They need to actually let the fans vote and choose what they want and force them to book it on the fly. So for those that don't know, Cyber Sunday was a pay-per-view in the Ruthless Aggression era where you could go to the WWE.com website and live on TV, you could vote who you wanted to have a certain match with somebody, what the stipulation would be, etc. That was very ahead of its time because there really wasn't social media at this time. Now you could really do this and do it really well. You could do Twitter polls, you could do YouTube polls. There's so many ways to be able to have an interactive event like this. The only difference is that they couldn't rig it. They couldn't come up with fake results like many people thought that they were doing for Cyber Sunday in its later years. We got to put Logan and Dom together. They're going to be cooking some of the best heel tag team stuff, and I'd like to see them win the tag titles. I summarized that because you wrote this like a goddamn 3-year-old. It seems like they're gonna maybe eventually go down that route, and I wouldn't hate it. That would be like the mega ultra super mega powers coming together, but from the dark side. I kind of want to see it. I'm down. The WWE has completely devalued the Royal Rumble by having 2 Rumble matches on the card. How the fuck does that devalue anything? Explain that to me. How does having a women's match devalue the men's match? They have nothing to do with one another. How does having a men's match devalue the women's match? They have nothing to do with one another. It doesn't matter. It's like having a men's briefcase and a women's briefcase for Money in the Bank. They don't interact. They don't devalue one another. This is stupid. Alberto Del Rio would have had a Hall of Fame caliber career if not for his personal life issues. Again, this is supposed to be hot takes, not really fucking obvious things. Yes, Alberto Del Rio not only would have had a Hall of Fame caliber career, he did have a Hall of Fame caliber career. If he wasn't an asshole, he'd be in the WWE Hall of Fame. But he's an asshole. He's not going to be in the WWE Hall of Fame. People arguing that Liv should get a Mania match against Rhea instead of Becky fail to realize Liv is nothing more than an upper mid-card talent. There's a reason she's always thrown into random tag teams. Damn, finally a spicy hot take. Dude, that was rough, but I mean, like, you're kind of speaking sense here. Now, I don't think that she's just some upper mid-card talent or anything like that. I do think that she has the potential to be a main eventer, but you hit it on the head there with her just being tossed into random tag teams. That's usually a symptom of somebody that they don't see as a long-term main event solution. So, shit, dude, you might have just been spitting some facts here, sadly. Someone from NXT should win the Rumble, then challenge for a main roster title at WrestleMania. Someone like a Tyler Bate would be cool to face Seth Rollins for the world title at Mania. No, this is this is terrible. I don't get the Austin Theory hate. Great look, great on the mic, great moveset. I could see Austin Theory versus Braun Breaker headlining WrestleMania in the future. So here's the thing. Great look, great on the mic, great moveset, and for some reason people just don't care because he struggles to connect with the audience. That's the problem. That is the inherent problem with Austin Theory because he has no other gaps in his game. As you mentioned, he is the whole package, but it is tough to find a reason to care about him. It is tough to find a reason to get behind him. It's even tough to find a reason to hate him when he's a dastardly heel. He's just sort of there sometimes, and even that feud with John Cena was not able to make us care about him, and that's problematic. He's still super young. He still has a long time to figure it out, and obviously the WWE loves him because they give him so many opportunities, but I get the Austin Theory hate. I understand it, is what I'm trying to say. The Katy Vick storyline is true cinema. Don't Google that. No babyface wrestler can have a good title reign after a memorable title win. It's just not possible. Damn, dude, that's actually kind of true. The thing is that the chase will always be better than seeing the babyface that was chasing being the gatekeeper and being the one that's defending the title. The chase is always so much better, which is why heels are just typically more entertaining as champions, because they're the ones trying to hold down the chase. They're the ones trying to stop the journey. And it's just a better story when the babyface is chasing. It's just an objective truth. So I'm kind of with you. Like, I look at some of the craziest journeys like Kofi Mania, like Daniel Bryan, just about anybody really. Then when it comes to defending the title, it just doesn't feel as special. That's why I'm concerned with people all of a sudden turning on Cody Rhodes when he finally finishes the story. If CM Punk returns to the WWE, that would be the best return of the modern era. I disagree. I think that title goes to Edge. The thing is that the glitz, the glamour, and the buzz of Edge's return to the WWE has already come and gone. But I just don't see a bigger return happening in a very long time than Edge. We're talking about a Hall of Famer, multi-time world champion, somebody who was beloved by wrestling fans and beloved by the industry and by wrestlers themselves, coming back from a career-ending injury, and they did such a great job of keeping it a secret. I don't see CM Punk's return being bigger than Edge's. Still, CM Punk's return is up there. All right, that's it. I'm done. Thanks for sending in your hot takes. See you next week for these. I'm done. Get out of here.